Big Ten has a whole new look. You know, they have annexed the West Coast team, Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA, which is in LA. That means long travel. Rutgers and USC, a nearly 2,500-mile trip in October. 5 new head coaches in the Big Ten, not counting David Braun. Jerome Moore going into Michigan. Jonathan Smith, Michigan State. Sean Foster taking over at UCLA among those changes. Preseason top 25 poll at the top is dominated by B1G. 4 in the top 10, 6 ranked, with USC and Iowa sneaking in. USC is going to get tested early against LSU. And in the 14 playoff era, the Big Ten bookended with championships. Ohio State winning the first, Michigan winning the most recent. So now the Big Ten with Michigan having won a national championship and Ohio State emptying the vault to bring in some star players for NIL. Where does that leave Ryan Day and the Buckeyes coming into this season?
Yeah, and I think that's a great place to start. Obviously, the number 2 team in the country behind Georgia. But if you think about what has happened over the last few years in Columbus, Ohio, and obviously the state of Ohio is what it is. It is a football place. They are football people, and they all love the Buckeyes. All Michigan has done to them over the last few years is smack them right in the mouth. In Columbus, in Ann Arbor, then they go win the national championship, and what's everybody in Ohio doing? Yeah, Ryan Day's won a bunch of games, but he can't win the big one. That one being the Michigan game. So with Chip Kelly coming over to run the offense, Will Howard getting transferred in there, Caleb Downs on the defensive side of the ball, Judkins, the running back, who is untackleable in college football at 25 for good reason. If the Ohio State Buckeyes don't win this year, I am worried that we will now be a country of 49 states because the state of Ohio will actually burn through the earth's core, Coach Saban.
Well, I do agree that Ohio State has a really good roster, and I think Ryan Day probably likes his roster. I think the key to the drill is how is Will Howard going to play at quarterback, for them, and can they manage the expectations? The worst thing for a team is to have these kind of expectations, have this kind of anxiety, on your players that they've got to go accomplish something rather than just go and compete in one play at a time and go out there and play. Oregon, Penn State, Michigan, they're all going to be good, and I think USC is a dark horse.
Nobody knows that better than you. You live that. How does Ryan Day deal with that? That expectations and almost unrealistic if you gave him advice, what would you say?
Well, the biggest thing that I always told our players was you got to play one play at a time like it has a history of life of its own. So go have fun, compete, be the best player you can be, and the scoreboard means nothing. All these external factors mean nothing until the game is over. So prepare the way you prepare. Don't worry about losing. Focus on what you have to do to be the best player you can be, and just stay focused on that and keep the team together. Forget about all these external factors.
Yeah, and there's so many of them, especially,
so many.
It's hard
Invention of rat poison, there.
Yeah, exactly. I tell you, this conference this year with the 4 teams coming in from out west, it's got tremendous depth. We talked a lot about Dylan Gabriel, the expectations on Oregon. I'm fascinated with Michigan. I can't remember a team winning a national championship and almost a forgotten team coming back the next year. Think about what they lost, Dad. You know this. 5 offensive linemen, J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum, all those incredible leaders on defense. And now you look at these guys that are going to be playing in 2023 or 2024. A lot of these guys played a lot of ball last year. I might be crazy. I think Michigan is I'm not saying they're going to win the Big Ten. I'm much higher on Michigan than I think a lot of people because I think they got, again, this new chip on their shoulder for 2024. No one's talking about them. No one cares about them. No one respects them. And these are the defending champs. So I think they're interesting. Oregon, obviously, Ohio State. And I really think Penn State, if Drew Aller can come along and the receivers, they're also a playoff potential caliber team.